Could you change the world just by breathing? I create living sculptures that can mitigate the effects of global climate crisis by harnessing the power of living algae. The sculptures use spectators' breaths as food. They grow while producing oxygen and removing toxins from the air. I moved my whole life from Croatia to Canada at the best time in history. That was just a couple of months before the pandemic struck. I came to Toronto to study interdisciplinary arts at OCAD University. And soon everything was shut down. I had no access to materials or tools or spaces to create art. The only resource I had to create something were 3 boxes of algae seaweed salad in my fridge that I used to eat. So I asked myself, why not? I started to experiment with the salad. And in a couple of months, I figured out some cool stuff. Turns out, one time, I just cooked it, spilled it on the counter, and left it overnight. And when I picked it up in the morning, there was this new material that looked like paper and glass, had a baby. And then I did what any normal person would do in my position. I started a living algae farm in my bathroom. Fast forward a year, and my apartment is a completely crazy experimental laboratory. There are things growing from the ceiling, things just bursting from the walls. And I started to think it's a good time for me to arrange an exhibition. So I called the Abozo Gallery from Toronto. I sent them my concept, and they're like, this is really great. And I'm on the phone with the gallery owner, and she asks me, how many pieces do you have ready for an exhibition? And I said, well, 0. And then there was the longest pause in the history of telephone conversations. And finally, the gallery owner says, this could be really an important concept for the environment. We believe in you. Can you have 7 pieces ready for an exhibition opening next month? And I say, sure, consider it done. I had no idea how to do it at that point. And then the most creative and prolific month of my life starts. I create 24/7, and I managed to finish 7 pieces and install them 5 minutes before the exhibition opening. Whew. The exhibition turned out to be a great success, and it got extended for 7 more months. One of the best comments that I got was from this super sharply elderly dressed lady that was really into environmental issues. And she told me, you're not an artist. You're not an artist, you're planting the seeds for a better future. And that really resonated with me, and I started to think about the possibility of a change on a global scale, or some real change. Algae in the oceans have been capturing carbon for millions of years, and they produce around 60% of planetary oxygen on a daily basis. And carbon dioxide is the biggest culprit for global warming and global climate change. Could I accomplish something similar in a gallery setting? So I set up an experimental laboratory in the gallery, and I started to watch people, and not in a creepy kind of way. Turns out, during the gallery's peak hours, the algae in the sculptures would grow faster. People would tell me they feel a breeze of fresh oxygen surrounding my sculptures, and most importantly, it makes them think more clearly about the issues they would like to resolve, not just the environmental issues. This is one of my babies. Let me show you how it grows. The green liquid that you see here, that's the living algae culture. What it does, it takes carbon dioxide from your breath, it eats it up, and it grows. And once it grows big enough, I scoop it up, I process it, and I built this. This is a grandkid of that algae seaweed salad from the beginning of our stories. If you were closer here, you would notice like little specks of green. These algae fibers have grown from the breaths of TEDx crew and members from our rehearsal last night. The sculpture has been made from breaths of spectators from my previous exhibitions, and the best thing is that all of your breaths from tonight are going to be part of the next sculpture I'll be building in the future. And sorry to say, by this point, I can't offer you any royalties for your participation. And if you come closer to the sculpture, you can notice bubbles of air flowing through its bodies. These are your breaths combined with the algae breaths. So when we think about breathing, we often don't think about it. But if you focus here and take a couple of breaths, then it's like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. You never heard anybody say, breathing sucks, right? And why is that important? Because breathing is a single, non-disputable fact that unites all humanity and all living beings. And that is important because no internet troll is going to write, oh my God, breathing is so woke, I'm going to be quitting tomorrow. And then we finally have this palpable, tangible point, something we can hold on to, a common ground in any conflict, which is really great. And as a war survivor myself, I often talk about human rights and social justice related to my artworks from a point of really profound, deep personal experience. If we dive deeper into breathing, we can also talk about BIPOC communities and how they're historically located near the power plants and they're feeling the worst of the climate crisis. We can talk about their rights to breathe. Or we can talk about indigenous communities and their rights for clean air and water and their rights to breathe. And in the times that we live in right now, we can talk about universal human right to breathe. And suddenly, solutions for climate crisis are also solutions for social injustices. And here's the most wonderful thing happening here. All of your breaths, all of these tiny molecules of your breaths are mixing up and collaborating and working together to give life to the algae in the sculpture. And all of the algae in the sculpture are working together and collaborating to give life to us. There's an invisible synergy of human and non-human life taking place right here and right now. And we might have forgotten how fantastic, how awesome it is to be a part of something that is larger than us. And suddenly, breathing is a blueprint for inclusion and equality. Breathing is also a tool of remembering. Fresh oxygen produced by the algae fires up our neurons and makes us see things more clearly. I was stuck in Toronto during the pandemic, and I worked with algae seaweed salad. And later on, I realized that was a way of me to remember my seaside home in Croatia. Sea has always been an important part of my identity and my culture. And I used to free dive to remember my ancestors. My grandpa, he used to say, if you ever want to talk to me when I'm gone, just ask the sea and the waves will answer. And that's exactly what I did. While diving, I was surrounded with algae, but we could not have communicated in such a hostile environment. Only by bringing the algae into the gallery setting, we started to communicate by breathing. Sculptures are also representatives of our collective memories. That time, you laughed at one of my jokes and exhaled a little bit more of carbon dioxide. That made the algae in the sculpture grow faster. Or you might have seen somebody awesome in the audience who dazzled you and took your breath away. That made the algae in the sculpture grow slower. And if we really scale this up, we could talk about planetary memories. Fossil fuels are long-term Earth's memories, shaped as layers of oil, gas, and coal. And by burning fossil fuels, we are erasing Earth's memories and turning them into pollution and toxicity. And algae, they're really great at removing toxic atmospheres. They snack on the fumes produced by burning fossil fuels. And that makes us healthier to fight another kind of toxicity, which is the digital one. We are all immersed into this endless stream of bad news on our phones and our devices, telling us all hope is lost. This war, there's no way out of this. And yet, hope is the most powerful weapon we have against climate change. Just think about what we have already accomplished here today. We captured carbon and transformed it into art. We produced oxygen and removed toxic atmospheres in collaboration with art and nature. Our breeding is creating a space of inclusivity and equality. And most importantly, not only we are removing carbon from the atmosphere, we are also taking away the power from the big carbon producers who thrive on the vision of our communities. We have transformed a simple act of breeding into an essential tool of climate action and resilience. Could we change the world just by breeding? I invite you all to take a deep breath with me on a count of 3 with the algae and the sculpture too. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you for breathing.